The most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman.
Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Every 8 Hours. I hope that you guys are doing well and staying safe. Tonight's story will be about 32-year-old Tiffany Joseph out of Detroit, Michigan. So I'm going to start this story in 2020, and then we're going to work our way up to today's time so we can talk about what's going on right now. So in 2020, Tiffany Joseph, a single mother, she has a son who is 9 years old, but she was also pregnant with her then boyfriend's baby. And so the two were dating. She got pregnant, and apparently he was not happy about the pregnancy. And the reason why I say that, because it was reported that the father of her child, Billy Ray Cromer, on October the 20th of 2020 at approximately 8 p.m. brutally assaulted her in the home that they both shared together. So they were living together. She was pregnant with his child, and then she had one son from a previous relationship. So in the attack on October the 20th of 2020, Billy Ray Cromer, I can't even get it together. The child that she's currently carrying, father, allegedly used his hands to choke Joseph and punch her in the head and stomach several times. Tiffany Joseph attempted to protect her stomach and the baby during the assault. However, the baby did not survive, the report stated. Officials reportedly said that following the vicious attack, Cromer also forced Tiffany Joseph to swallow several unknown prescription medicine pills before eventually taking her to the hospital that evening. Doctors later informed Joseph that she had lost the baby. A pretrial conference in the torture and assault case was scheduled to take place August the 5th of 2022. So that pretrial case would have took place 2 days ago, because today is August the 7th. So Wayne County prosecutor Kim Worthy reportedly said the alleged assault in 2020 on Tiffany Joseph was among the worst cases of domestic violence that she had ever seen. She said the office had been presented with well over 30,000 domestic violence warrants in just the last 5 years. And she said, I can unequivocally say that alleged facts on this case were among the worst I've seen. Domestic violence is ever present. It is tragic. It is real. It is tremendously disturbing, and it should be taken much more seriously by society. Now, let's discuss this for a minute. I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but researchers found that U.S. women who are pregnant or were pregnant in the past 42 days, the postpartum period, die by homicide at more than twice the rate that they die of bleeding or placental disorders. The leading causes of what are usually classified as pregnancy-related deaths. So basically, homicide is the top cause of maternal death in the United States. So even though she was living with him and he ended up murdering the baby, she's really lucky to escape with her life, because pregnant women are murdered by the person who impregnated them as the number one cause of death. Now, I bring this up because I know you guys are familiar with what's happening with Roe versus Wade and how they have changed the laws surrounding pregnancy. Basically, I mean, it's going to be different for every state, but basically where they're heading to is that a woman cannot, under any circumstances, get an abortion unless it's a threat to her life. And there was even a case of a physician who was pregnant, and they refused to give her an abortion, even though she was at risk for bleeding out, and she ended up dying. And so I bring this up in this case because, as we know, the channel is called Every 8 Hours, but we've narrowed it down to it's every 5 hours that a black woman or child is being murdered by someone who was supposed to love them. So with this change in the law, I saw this as very concerning because, first of all, in Georgia, they're making it, which Georgia's where I am, they're making it that you can request child support at conception. Lawmakers have introduced a bill that will allow women to collect child support while pregnant. Titled the Unborn Child Support Act, the bill would allow an expected mother to even retroactively collect on child support up to the point of conception, as long as it can be proved by a physician. I don't know if y'all realize how dangerous all of these changes are. Black women have been notoriously murdered by the person who has impregnated them. This is only going to make that situation worse. So, you mean to tell me at conception, not knowing even if the child will survive, a woman will be able to request child support? I think this is very dangerous. I also think the overturning of Roe versus Wade is very dangerous. I think they're putting women, not just Black women, but a high rate of Black women, because like I said, we're murdered every 5 hours, in a very dangerous situation. At least if a man gets a woman pregnant, the ones who don't overreact right away, they have at least 9 months to get their finances together, to get themselves together, to accept the situation. And I know this is kind of crazy for me to say, but common sense would say they should be thinking about that when they first have sex, but we know common sense ain't so common. And so a lot of them take the way out of hurting the mother. And so back to our story. So instead of Mr. Ray Cromer taking responsibility for what he did as far as causing Tiffany Joseph to have an abortion or a miscarriage of their child, he's sitting in jail and he's coming up with ways to stop her from being able to testify. And in coming up with that way, this is what he did.
We'll begin here at 5 with what prosecutors are calling a horrifying case of domestic abuse that later turned into a murder for hire plot that left a Detroit woman dead.
A Detroit man and his nephew are behind bars tonight, charged with the murder of Tiffany Joseph.
This case follows a violent crime that dates back to October of 2020. The prosecution in that case ended up delayed because of the pandemic. Rod Maloney has been digging in on both cases tonight as this uncle and nephew both stand charged with murder.
A lot more questions left asked than answered here because this house is burned out and a woman was found shot to death here. But we do not know whether the house burned before, during, or after. But there is one thing for certain. For its former resident, 32-year-old Tiffany Joseph, it was a very violent place. Detroit police called out here just before midnight on July 4th. They found Tiffany's body inside. She'd been shot.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Cromer, can you state your name for the record, please?
Billy Cromer.
Arraigned from behind bars today in the Wayne County Jail and wearing a COVID mask, 35-year-old Billy Ray Cromer. Here's a better look at his face. He's charged with trying to hire his nephew to kill his girlfriend, and he's facing a premeditated first-degree murder charge.
Spencer Lewis Cromer III.
Prosecutors say Spencer Lewis Cromer III agreed to the hired hit suggested by his uncle on the 4th of July, and he's now facing premeditated first-degree murder and felony firearms charges. But it was back in October of 2020 in the now gutted home that Detroit police and the Wayne County prosecutor's office say that Cromer beat a pregnant Tiffany Joseph so badly she lost her baby. The elder Cromer arrested by Detroit police, charged with assault with intent to do great bodily harm, torture, and felonious assault. That beating so bad, prosecutor Kim Worthy at the time noted in a press release, quote, "This office has been presented with well over 30,000 domestic violence warrants in just the last 5 years. I can unequivocally say that the alleged facts in this case are among the worst I have seen," end quote. And because of COVID closing down the 36th District Court, that case ended up repeatedly postponed. It is still on the docket for a motions hearing next week. And there is a pretrial scheduled for August 5th in the domestic violence case. And so far, there is no indication that that case won't proceed, even though the victim in the case has now passed. Back to you.
What a case, Rod. So what about the murder cases, though? When do the defendants return to court?
Well, interesting you asked, Devin, because on August 5th, there's also going to be a probable cause hearing for the elder Cromer in this case. And also, there is another preliminary examination a week later where we were likely to get still more background on what happened in the murder case.
Yeah. All right, Rod.
And so this man waited almost 2 years later, a week before trial, to recruit his 18-year-old nephew to murder this woman. This is sad, y'all, because not only did you kill her unborn child and she had to grieve that and her family had to grieve that, but then you come back and recruit your nephew to murder her. And so you threw away your nephew's life and your life, and you killed her. What kind of man with any type of decency would also go to destroy his nephew as well? Like, let's really think about that. You are willing to have your nephew do 25, probably 25 to life. You don't care nothing about nobody but yourself. This is narcissist activity. This is narcissism at its worst. You don't care that your nephew is only 18-year-old with the rest of his life ahead of him. To man up would have been to take the charges because of the crime that you did. To just admit it, take the charges, and get it out the way and suffer the consequences because you did what you did. But now, not only will you suffer the consequences, now you're going to be in jail for life. And then you've thrown away the whole life of your own nephew. An uncle is supposed to love, appreciate, and protect his nephew. And the boy was 18 years old. So, 18 years old, you got this older adult telling you something, you haven't been led correctly. I give him a pass because he's 18 years old. He's still responsible and he still should do the time. But where is the guidance? And see, this is the thing. These are the men who are being raised, who are being brought up, who we are being surrounded by. A man who would recruit his 18-year-old nephew to throw his whole life away as well. Because you didn't want to be responsible for the child you created. I know she had to be terrified. Because even after healing from losing her child and how he assaulted her, she probably felt like, okay, when I go to court, this situation will be over. I can finally move on with my life. And then to have this as the final coup de grace to murder her. She probably had no idea that he was even capable of this, even though the things that he did to cause her an abortion. So now her family is grieving. And then because of what happened to the nephew, his family is grieving. And they're going to be in prison. And then you look at the system, and a lot of times as a Black woman, you want to say, they're unfairly locking up Black men. But when you really, really read about these things that are happening, they're not. Most of these cases, they're getting them own selves locked up because of lack of guidance, lack of responsibility, and narcissism. This is very sad. I pray that Tiffany's child, her 9-year-old, is in the arms of family who can take care of him. May Tiffany rest in peace. I will follow this case because I'm curious to see how much time that Mr. Billy Ray Cromer will get, as well as his nephew. Make sure that we are protecting ourselves. I say this every video. Every 5.5 hours, a Black woman or a Black female child is being murdered by someone who is supposed to love them. Make sure that we are protecting ourselves. Make sure we are evaluating everyone that we're allowing in our lives. And if they don't belong there, then don't have them there. Don't be too desperate to have someone in your life when you see violent tendency. Nothing wrong with being alone. Being alone is not the end of the world. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next video.